or at least students from one or two Highlands provinces split away from the main student body on the issue of the boycotts?
Yeah, there is disagreement within the student body, but I don't accept to call it an ethnic or a provincial conflict. It is more complex than that. The students here, they're just mates, and when they fall out, they tend to group in provincial groups, but it's not that deeply felt. So at the reconciliation, they spoke very maturely, and they promised to not to retaliate, and usually that type of agreements they hold.
That's Dr. Albert Schramm from Unitec in Lae. The Cook Islands Opposition Coalition has dismissed government claims that it's delivering sound, disciplined financial management. It says, Judge, because the government's accounts haven't been audited for the past 3 years. The opposition's finance spokesman, James Beer, told Don Wiseman this is highly irresponsible.
What concerns us is that we're debating things, but it may be irrelevant because those documents, those very important Crown accounts, have not been audited by the audit department.
The government, of course, is saying that everything's looking hunky-dory. What makes you think it isn't?
Well, the government likes to say that. We know it isn't because we've got anecdotal evidence from a number of business people and a number of people on the island, one of them is myself, that the economy is definitely slipping. But what really compounds the situation is that we've seen the current tax revenue the country is receiving, and we've had an increase in VAT amounts. A bill was passed in 2012 to increase VAT by an extra 2.5%, and at the same time be able to get more revenue. What's really interesting about this certain development is that revenue collection, which was estimated to come in excess of about $8 million over the current revenue that we're collecting, hasn't occurred. The same VAT amounts are beginning to show up year after year, despite the fact there was increased VAT. So the delivery of a VAT increase has not given the government what it had thought it would get. But as a result of proposing this increase, they've gone out there and expended more money in terms of welfare and benefits to old age pensioners and children. And that really hasn't been taken care of because the VAT increase that they thought they would get did not eventuate. And the reason for that, of course, is because what they didn't realize is that a number of issues were raised to them over a potential increase in cost of goods and services that would force more and more people to leave. And what has been happening is that a whole bunch of Cook Islanders are beginning to find the cost of living, particularly in the Outer Island, has gone up exponentially, not by 2.5%, but by a lot more as a result of the 2.5% VAT increase. So as a result of that, it's become harder and harder for Outer Islanders, particularly in the Northern Group where there's a lot of isolation and distance travel and transportation, becoming harder and harder for them to live. So as a result of that, we've had more and more Cook Islanders jumping on a plane and departing the shores port of New Zealand and Australia.
And it's purely that's really dragging the economy down.
Yes, we've got a whole bunch of stuff. What we're really concerned about is that we've got documents or Crown accounts that haven't been audited for now going on 4 years. So the last one that came to Parliament was for the 2012 period. Any aid agency, any donor agency in which the Cook Islands government, unfortunately the country relies on so much, should be concerned that the relevancy of those documentation and it's being audited and coming to Parliament for oversight and transparency has not existed for the last 4 years. So when the government says we're doing a great job in managing the country's affairs, our position is it's not. How do we know that when we haven't had transparency over this issue or oversight by Parliament?
James Beer. Fiji's opposition leader has asked New Zealand to put back the heat on the government of Frank Bainimarama. Rotemumukepa presented the Prime Minister John Key with a submission during his trip to Suva last week, saying New Zealand should withhold support for Fiji in its bid for a seat in the UN Human Rights Council and the presidency of the UN General Assembly. She said the government is intent on establishing a parliamentary dictatorship, not a democracy. Rotemumu told Sally Round she apologised to Mr Key for Frank Bainimarama's welcome speech in which he lashed out at the New Zealand media and defended his 2006 coup.
It is something that is not done at a state dinner. Normally, you don't, address issues like that, which he could have done when they had their meeting with him this morning. What he was trying to do there was to justify what they had done illegally in terms of the coups and the other related activities.
Do you think this government has the intention to completely mend relations with New Zealand, given what happened last night?
With his present government under Barangian Bainimarama, he has been associated with dictatorship for some time. So for him to think outside of that box, it's going to take him time, because he's used to, saying whatever and it gets done. And that's not how democracy works. I think with our Prime Minister, it's going to take him some time, and I say this because we see it in Parliament all the time, where we are hoping to be working towards a more democratic country. But it's taking time because of the way he thinks in terms of the dictatorship that has worked well for him all this time, and also in Parliament because they have the numbers.
And what was his response when you apologised?
Mr. Key has been, a long time in politics. He is a person who's not going to be seen to be taking any side. He just kind of heard me out with other issues that we brought up.
Did he respond in any way to your concerns about the opposition?
I think he sympathizes with any opposition, because the opposition does not have the easiest role to play.
And did he offer you any assurances, anything like that?
Well, what he said was that New Zealand would try to help Fiji as much as possible in terms of engaging with our people and the issues that we brought up. And just the last point that I did bring up to him was to thank him for re-engaging with our military in terms of the training exercises that used to be done previously in New Zealand, which they have resumed, I think it was last year, which they have resumed with the Fiji military, because it is very important that democratic countries, especially Commonwealth countries like New Zealand, engage with our military, because our military are going to other countries where they are learning new tricks in terms of how to do things, which is not necessarily democratic. So we support the stand that he's taken in terms of the military training exercises, and we hope that it will continue.
That's the leader of Fiji's opposition, Rotemu Kepa. Leaders in the education and business